Well, welcome everyone to our February community call. I don't know if you've all watched a previous community call before, or if you've maybe watched one back or tried to participate in one of them in the past, but they've been on YouTube historically, and it's just been more of a watch Jeremy and I talk or whoever else we have on. But this year we're trying things a little bit differently. We have a new format. Obviously, we're all here on Zoom. And as part of that, I'd like to encourage anyone who's comfortable with turning their camera on to feel free to do so. One of the things that we're really trying to do with this new approach towards community call is get the NetBox community together. People, obviously we're all engineers in some manner, way, shape, or form. It's just, it feels nice to have the community together. And when we can drive that participation, get people communicating with each other, saying hi, friendly waves, that'd be awesome. But the intent here, like I said, is to drive some more engagement. So rather than just listening to Jeremy and I talk for 15, 20 minutes or so, we're going to have people actually do presentations today. And I'll be doing one of them. And then we have two community members, Tyler and Alex, who are going to do a presentation as well. And this is something you're going to start seeing in these community events going forward, is just more participation. And we'll always be looking for people who are willing to volunteer to come on. And it doesn't have to be super technical. Could just be a tip, something that the way that you use NetBox, the way it works for you, the way you go about modeling something that you think is kind of unique for your environment. And reach out to us in the future, and we'd love to have you on a future call. Oh, I was supposed to get to that slide. All right, so that's the format. All right, so next, I don't know how many of you have seen this, but you've likely seen, hopefully at some point, like we'd have in the corner here at NetBox Labs, which is a newer brand that you'll see out there as far as kind of stewardship over the NetBox project. So previously, you would have seen NS1 out there with the cloud hosted version and being a bit of a sponsor for the project. And we're still part of NS1, those who are part of that side of the shop. But now we're basically under our own brand name. So now we have new email addresses, a little bit more support for the open source side. We've got a larger team now. We've got some more support in terms of dedicated team members performing specific roles. So just wanted to let everyone know what NetBox Labs is about in a short version. So you'll start seeing more of that out there, but the NetBox open source project, the GitHub pages, everything else that's out there for the open source community is still going to be there, but this will just be on that commercial hosting side. So I think next we'll jump into the new website. Well, the existing website that's been redesigned. So
yeah, let's check that over.
Bring that up. So I don't know how many of you have seen the old website, the old netbox.dev, but this is the new site.
Yeah, the old one wasn't much to talk about, really. It was a static site that we'd been maintaining as a GitHub page for about a year or so. That's netbox.dev, and basically served as a blog. We've had a couple, I think, guest posts there. All the newer releases and everything would be posted there. And fortunately, we finally got around. I say we, Arthur Hansen, fellow maintainer at NetBox Labs, colleague, took it upon himself to help basically renovate the website, converting it to a dynamic site now. So it has not only the blog, as you can see there, but also a new plugins repository. So one of the things that we've struggled with for a while is all these people are coming out with awesome NetBox plugins, but kind of struggling to get that in front of the community. So we've experimented with like the GitHub repo tags before, netbox-plugin, which works reasonably well, but it's not the best way to define things. So now we have this awesome repository right on netbox.dev that people can submit their own plugins, and we'll post them on there. It'll pull down some stats from GitHub and lots of cool stuff. As you can see there, you can organize it by a number of watchers. I think we're going to add star count or something like that in the near future, and then just have one kind of I'm going to say source of truth for NetBox plugins. So really excited about that. And if you have any plugins that you'd like to recommend, that you'd like to put in front of the community, by all means, please go there and submit them, and we'll get them posted.
Yeah, actually, this morning I picked up on a new plugin that I'm going to submit in here. 2-3 days ago, I can't remember the maintainer's name. I believe it was she put together a basically like a documentation plugin that will let you store different kinds of just documents that you may need to put that you'd like to put alongside NetBox. So like signed contracts or different paperwork and things like that. That I installed it this morning. It works pretty well. It's pretty slickly implemented. So I think there was an older version that she forked and actually updated. So I'll have to do that after we finish up with the call.
Very cool. Yeah, there's another topic that I know we covered with the website we're intending to do soon is also add the ability for people to basically propose plugins. It's kind of an idea board, and people can upvote and downvote stuff, or upvote at least ideas that they would like to see, so that we can kind of have a better way to aggregate interest from the community in what kind of plugins people are interested in, and might help give people ideas as far as what to work on that would be interesting. So yeah, keep an eye on the website. We'll continue to build it out here over the next few weeks and months.
Nice. I didn't know we were planning on that. That's gonna be cool. All right, Jeremy, you want to run us through 3.5?
Yeah, so
the timing.
Some real quick updates on that. As most of you probably know, and if you didn't, NetBox has a 4-month release cycle. So every calendar year we'll go through a minor release. So that's like 3.4, 3.5, 3.6. 3.4 was released in December of last year. We have 3.5 slated for April, with a beta to precede that probably sometime in late March. And then we'll have releases 3.6 and 3.7 in August and December of this year. So as far as 3.5, we're making really great progress with that. We have some pretty major keystones, I think, coming out in that release, one of which is the ability to synchronize data from remote sources like a GitHub repository or S3 bucket. So that's basically the ability to replicate files that are stored elsewhere into NetBox and use that data for other things like populating config context data, export templates, and another new feature now is config templates. So for a long time, people have been kind of generating configuration templates for network devices from data in NetBox and from elsewhere, using other tools. So typically you use something like Jinja 2 to write the template, and then you'll populate that template and render it using context data that's being pulled from NetBox and from other sources. And then take that render template and push that out to a device that's live on the network, or store it for future use. So now in 3.5, NetBox will have the ability to not only define templates, but also render them natively within there, so that you have an API endpoint to be able to pull, say, for this device, render its config using context data that I've defined either locally in NetBox or from a remote data file, as I mentioned, and apply this Jinja template and then spit that out as a full rendered config. So that's one of the other major features coming in 3.5. Something else that's pretty cool is dashboard widgets. So for a long time, we haven't really paid a lot of attention to the kind of like the homepage of NetBox. As you know, it shows different statistics as far as object counts, and toward the bottom it shows the change log, but none of that's super interesting. So in version 3.5, now we're introducing these customizable widgets that you'll be able to arrange and customize your own personal dashboard to show the information that you're most interested in. So you'll still be able to show the change log and the object counts, things like that. We'd also like to introduce an RSS feed, like for netbox.dev. People have proposed various different widgets. One of them, which I really like, is the ability to basically bookmark different objects in NetBox. We're going to try to get that in there as well. And once we have that framework in place in 3.5, and it's currently in progress, making good progress on it. Not ready just yet, but it'll definitely ship in 3.5. And once we have that framework in place, I'm sure plugins obviously will be able to register their own dashboard widgets as well. So it's going to open up a lot of functionality that I'm pretty excited about. So keep an eye on that. As I mentioned, we're making good progress. We should have a beta out for 3.5 in probably the last week of March. We typically try to get them out about a month prior to the scheduled final release. So keep an eye out for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. All right. With our updates out of the way, we're going to jump into a couple different shares here. So I'm going to be presenting one. And then, like I mentioned, we have two other community members, Tyler and Alex here, who are going to do a short presentation as well. So Tyler, Alex, I know we didn't talk about this ahead of time. So would one of you like to go first, or would you like me to crack the ice here? Break the ice? Sometimes it's fun to go first. Other times it's fun to go last.
We can keep it alphabetical. I'll go.
All right, go for it. So you should be able to share. If you're not, let me know.
Great. Of course, Zoom, new permissions.
Aha.
I got. Well, someone else wants to go. I'll handle this.
I can go. Yeah, I can go. I will try and share. I'll try and attempt it. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Hopefully, great. So I won't do too much kind of the where I work, etc. But I'm Alex Gittings. I work at IP Fabric, and the problem we had is that a lot of our customers use NetBox, but they also use a product that we supply called IP Fabric that will do automatic discovery of a network. It will discover all the devices that we support, different things like interfaces, technologies, etc. And a lot of our customers wanted the ability to be able to synchronize that into a tool like NetBox, so that they can have it as a single source of truth to be able to start generating configuration from the data that's within NetBox. And it's a great addition in 3.5 of being able to actually have the configuration generated, because that's a great use case in that you could discover a brownfield environment, populate a source of truth like NetBox, and then generate an instant configuration pretty much within a short amount of time. So I'll show IP Fabric has discovered, for example, I don't know if that's shown there, but 76 devices here. And what we wanted was the ability to synchronize these devices, interfaces, IP addresses that belong to those interfaces up to NetBox. So luckily we had a call with Jeremy, and Jeremy was also looking to have the ability to propose and stage changes. So within 3.4, Jeremy released the ability to, if I go to the 3.4 release notes, add an API for stage changes. So this allows people within a plugin to be able to propose changes to NetBox that is actually not committed to the database. So it'll stay in a separate part of the database, and then you can choose to merge that proposed database changes to the actual NetBox itself. So we've built a proof of concept plugin at the moment. So the idea is we want to synchronize these 76 devices into NetBox. I have NetBox here. It's totally blank, totally empty, zero everything, no sites, no devices, etc. And we're running 3.4.3 at the moment. So I have a plugin down here called IP Fabric. I've added some credentials, so the API token from IP Fabric, etc., within the Python configuration of Django. And IP Fabric has the ability to work based on snapshots. So over time, as your network changes and you discover new devices and your network changes, we're able to see the reflection in what we call snapshots. So between these two snapshots, we can see the 76 devices, and then we add more, so the 80 odd devices. What we'll do is just sync the baseline snapshot we have here. So when we select the snapshot, you can select what to synchronize. And when you select that, it will show the sites that you can synchronize at the moment. And if we change that, for example, go to this one here, the UI will automatically update and query IP Fabric for the sites that are available to sync. And we'll go back to the one we want to synchronize. I'll select the default, which is everything. I press sync, and it starts a worker in the Redis worker in the background, and we'll start processing the information of what to sync into NetBox. But just remember, this 3.4 introduced the staged stage changes functionality. So we can see that we've ingested those 76 devices. If we select stage changes, the UI is not the best at the moment, it's a work in progress, but shows the proposed changes that we would make to NetBox. So it'll create a site, create a manufacturer, device type, platform, role, device, interface. If the interface has got an IP address, etc., it will add the lot. We have the ability to merge the synchronized changes. Oh, I'll just show you quickly that there's nothing in NetBox still. We've got a merge job running now. So that when that's completed, it will commit that to the database. And if we go to sites now, we've got all the sites that we had in IP Fabric. If we go to the devices, we've got all the devices. And again, it's added the IP address of that device, the primary IP address. It's added all the interface descriptions, IP addresses for all those. So you can easily bootstrap using something like IP Fabric, a discovery tool, and using a plugin within NetBox to bootstrap the source of truth and start using some NetBox to derive intent out of your network. So then you could go and start changing the interface description, start generating configuration. And the idea is that once you've made a change to the network, you could do a rediscovery and then compare the change of what is actually configured on the network against the intended change in NetBox. So you could say that what is configured in the network is not in the intent, is the idea. So it's a brief overview of the plugin. I've been working on it for a little bit, but yeah, plenty more things to do. Like some of our customers want the ability to do a diff of before and after, what it will change, etc. And you can also see the synchronization history, etc., the version of IP Fabric and whatnot. So that's a brief overview. Feel free to ask any questions about that plugin or what reasons why.
Yeah, it's pretty slick, Alex. And I may not have mentioned this at the top when we were introducing everything, but at the end of each presentation, we're going to leave a couple extra minutes for Q&A. So yeah, if anyone has any questions for Alex about what he showed or his thoughts on anything, feel free to speak up.
Have you open sourced the code for the plugin?
Not yet, but it will be open sourced, yeah. So for our customers to use it as they wish. Once we have an alpha, or it's like alpha at the moment. We've got some customers testing it, but once we have like a beta release, we'll be open sourcing it from then.
Awesome. There was one question in the chat. I think it was Ed Daniel who asked how discovery is being done. If you want to just touch on that real briefly.
Yeah, so the IP Fabric discovery is very simple. We log into as many devices as we can via SSH, and our discovery method is that we try and connect to as many neighbors of that device to increase the range of discovery. And then once we've discovered a device, we discover the vendor, model, etc., and then start running a bunch of show commands, just as a network engineer would do an initial discovery or troubleshooting process. So show up table, show root table, etc. And we fan out from there and build a large database of devices and the technologies that they're running so that we can have accurate topologies. We can do things like end-to-end path tracing through the network and whatnot. But the idea is that we want our customers that are looking to, one, doing automation, they need something to be able to have that intent, and a lot of our customers are using NetBox. So that's the idea of the plugin, is to take the discovery piece and assurance piece, move it into an intent platform like NetBox where you can define the intent, and then you get a full cycle of, you might have Ansible using configuration contexts as to generate configuration, push it to a device, trigger a new snapshot of your environment using IP Fabric, and then validate that what is actually configured is what as NetBox is intending.
Cool. I don't know if this is a little too secret sauce, but you say you're SSHing in. Are you guys using something like Scraply? Or are you basically screen scraping that output, or do you have something more fancy?
So we are essentially running show commands and passing the results in IP Fabric, yes, but it's all custom software that our engineers have developed in-house as part of our product.
So I have a question. It looks like IP Fabric is a pretty mature product at this point. So I'm curious, what is NetBox doing for you that you don't already have a solution for?
So our platform doesn't allow you to, for example, propose changes to a network. That's where NetBox comes in, of being able to store that intent. We collect the data, we can make it visual, and we can provide assurance, but we don't allow the users to change values to then derive the intent. So the idea is we do what we do very well. We don't want to step on anyone else's toes. So a lot of people say, why do you not do configuration push? And that's because there's Ansible, many open source tools that do that. If you go commercial, iTential, you can go to other vendors as well. We want to gather the data, assure that it's correct, and have the platforms that you want in place to be able to do that configuration push. Or every customer, every company has their own method, whether it's NetBox, a mix of NetBox, ServiceNow, info blocks, for example, for IPAM. Got to be able to work within the ecosystem. I think it's important that we solve what we want to solve, and that the customer has the tools to be able to do everything else. So that's the partnership between IP Fabric and NetBox.
It's awesome. Well, thank you, Alex. That was really cool to see. I know I've been hearing little drips and drabs that you guys were working on something. So it's really cool to actually see it in front of me.
Yep, no problem.
Awesome. So Tyler, are you back?
I'm back, and I think we've got the right level of permissions now. So
excellent.
So I'm Tyler Bigler. I'm a staff systems engineer at a large retailer, and I recently made some contributions to the NetBox reports repo for some custom validators. So I just kind of want to showcase those off and maybe give some inspiration and ideas for what you can do with custom validators beyond just the simple ones that are directly built in. So this is the docs page. You can normally set validation rules just right here, plain text kind of stuff like minimum length, max length, but you can write code. If you scroll down, there's some classes you can write. So that's what I'm showcasing here. So I've got this local NetBox instance here, and the first one I'm going to show is these are all kind of around circuit data and keeping your circuit inventory clean and correct. And so the first use case that I had was we would have a site that was closing down for whatever reason. Engineer would go into NetBox and they would mark the site as retired. Great. Problem is there was a bunch of related objects for that site that were also marked inactive or offline or decommissioned. So I wanted to validate, this is for circuit specifically, but basically we don't want you to be able to retire a site if there are circuits not in the decommissioning status or the deprovisioning status. That workflow should all happen at roughly the same time. Site should be decommissioning. The circuits should also be decommissioning. So that's what this validator does. So if I've got the site here, we can see it's got 2 circuits assigned to it. If I go click onto those circuits real quick, they're both active. Great. So now I'm going to go change the status. It's retired. We skipped through everything else, just straight to retire. That's fine. And now you'll get this warning that says you can't set the status to retired because you've got 2 circuits that aren't in one of these statuses. And I'll show the snippet of code here in a moment. So a couple things you can tweak the statuses that you want. You could change for the circuits themselves or for the site. Maybe you want a check to happen at the decommissioning stage too. You could do that. So the code for this, pretty simple if you're familiar with the Django ORM and working in the innards of NetBox already. So we just grab our circuit count with the Django query language, and we're checking for status. And if that number is greater than 0, and we're trying to set the status for the site to retired, we fail. And that's it. That's pretty much it. But that's like a handy little thing that you can do besides just saying the field itself is required or must be this or whatever. You can go follow these related paths for all these different objects. So you could use the same kind of logic for devices or prefixes, anything that belongs to a site, because you've got the full power of the Django ORM at your fingertips here to be able to do that kind of stuff. All right, so that's first scenario for circuits. The other scenario was for this next validator is there's an install date field for circuits in NetBox, and that's great. It's not required. You can make it required with the simple validators. But the scenario that I was running into is I had a bunch of circuits. Most of them had install dates, but we also had a bunch that did not have install dates. So if I were to make the install date field required suddenly, if I ever went to go edit one of the circuits that didn't have a date and I didn't know what it was, and for whatever, the records were lost to time for whatever, I'm not going to be able to save that circuit. I don't want to put dummy data in either. So I had this weird case where I wanted to make install date required, except for those unique circumstances. So the idea came up with, I'll start with the code here because I think that'll make it a little easier to wrap your head around, is basically if you're creating a new circuit, install date is required. If the circuit has already been created and it has an install date, you can't remove the install date. The piece that I had to add was if it doesn't already have an install date and it still doesn't, that's fine. We'll just let it pass. So we skip circuits that are planned provisioning. They haven't been installed yet. If in Django language, in Django world, if it has a primary key, which is what the .pk attribute is, that means it's a record in the database already. It's already been committed to the database. So we can check that to see if we're creating a new circuit or editing one. And then I'm cheating a little bit because I'm technically using a private field here for the pre-change snapshot for the changelog record that gets created when you make a modification in NetBox. So I'm checking the install date status there before I actually save. There is another way you can do it that would not rely on private fields. It would do an additional database query, which you may or may not want depending on your environment. So you can check that here. And then, so what that behavior ends up looking like is, if I go to the circuit here, so this one's already got an install date. If I try and delete it and save, I should get, you've got to have an install date. But if I were to, let's see, let me go find one that doesn't have an install date. This one doesn't. I can go in here, and this is my favorite circuits. Leaving install date blank still, and hitting save, and it saves just fine. Now, if I were to go back to the other one and want to edit it, or I'm sorry, if I want to create a new one, we'll just put in something here, blah, blah, blah. Going to leave install date blank, and let's see what happens. Got to have a date. So that's it. It was really just kind of complicated just to allow those legacy entries to kind of squeak by the new validation, but it helps you kind of migrate into requiring install dates. And then maybe at some point in the future, those older circuits that you don't have dates for will drop off, and they'll be deleted, and then you could maybe even get rid of this validator in the future, down the line. So that's the first circuit validator. The other ones are around the commit rate and circuit terminations. The use case here was we would have a circuit get created, and then later the speeds would get upgraded and the engineer might go update the commit rate, but not the port speeds, or they would update the port speeds and not the commit rate. So you would end up in a situation where the commit rate was higher than the port speeds of the terminations, which I don't think is possible, but maybe. And in some cases, the commit rate would be much lower than the port speed, which is allowed, and I'm not affecting that here. But really, it was just the scenario where the commit rate was higher, was out of alignment with the port speed. So that was the idea here. So this doesn't make commit rate required. It's still optional, but if you put one in, it's going to do some checks on the terminations as well. So if you're creating a circuit, you're not going to have terminations right out the gate, so you can put a commit rate in or not, it doesn't matter. But as soon as you go to try to create the terminations, it's going to check those against the commit rate if one is present. And vice versa. If you were to create, not have a commit rate and go add port speeds and then want to go later add a commit rate, it's going to get checked there as well. So the logic here is fairly simple. We're checking if we don't have terminations because it's a new circuit, then we're just going to return. If we have a commit rate, then we're going to go do a query to see what our port speed is and our upstream speed. And if they are out of alignment, then we fail. And this is just Django logic here. This dunder LT is less than operation with integers, so it's really handy. And then kind of the same thing for the port speed and termination speeds. So if I go to the circuits, let's see. So this one's got a commit rate of 100 meg, and we'll go in here and we'll say 10 meg. And you don't even leave the page, and you get your warning, and it tells you the commit rate of the circuit that this is attached to. So very kind of simple, but more complex than you may find built into core for whatever reason. And you can add on these too. So there's all kinds of additional validations you can do. These are both just simple kind of one-to-one related objects that but you could trace those relations using the Django RM to other objects beyond. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
That is really cool, Tyler.
It's very cool.
How long did that take you to put together?
A couple days, maybe. Like I said, these are kind of simple validators, and I mean, I'm also already familiar with NetBox and the Django RM quite a bit too, so I think that obviously sped things up there. But I mean, as you can see, the code, there's not much code here, so yeah. I mean, even if you were just kind of tinkering and learning this stuff, you could probably figure this out in a few days if you already knew Python. You know, it's all relative, but yeah, they very simple, but added a lot of really, solved a lot of really good use cases for us. So I've been very happy with it so far.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. And I can't count the number of times where, either it was myself or somebody else on my team forgot, whatever it is, but we have to record that piece of data, contract information, anything like that. So that's a cool approach for circuits.
And just to throw out that these are on the reports repo under the custom validator section. They're the only ones there. So if you want to go tweak them and modify them, go for it.
Awesome. Any questions for Tyler?
So where does that code get installed? Is that something that can be done through the NetBox GUI, or do I need to have access to the host running NetBox?
That's good question. So that Python code will have to be within the NetBox, the environment that NetBox is installed to. There's a few ways you can install it. You can install it in your configuration.py. I use the dynamic configuration where you define in here what the model is, and then the path to the validator. If you refer to the NetBox documentation, it talks about how those different options and the different ways that you can reference them. So yeah, you define these, you refer to the content types, and then there's a couple different ways you can, but yes, the code has to live on the same server in the same environment as NetBox itself.
I guess question for you, Jordan. As a NetBox Cloud user, is that a feature that's on the NetBox Cloud roadmap?
So today we can help you with that. Tomorrow, not literally tomorrow, but there's going to be a change in the administrative console backend that's going to enable more more of those upload types things for reports, scripts, things like that. So yeah, that is coming down the line.
Something else I'll call out real quick as well is, so what Tyler demoed is Python-based logic, right? So very complex logic. I actually have Python classes that are being executed. NetBox does also support, I think he alluded to it really quick toward the beginning, just JSON definitions of very simple rule sets. So if you only have something like, maybe I want to enforce a regular expression to control the formatting of my device names, you can do that solely within the configuration. There's no need to write any Python code. But as Tyler demoed, the really, really interesting stuff comes about when you do drop down to the Python level. You can implement any kind of arbitrary logic. And you can even do things beyond just the validation. For example, maybe you have a problem where you're training your users to do something a certain way, but you find that some people are still, struggling with it. They might need help. They're still trying to do things the older way. You could even go so far as having that validator send an email to you or to someone else saying, hey, this so-and-so user is still trying to do something. You might want to go talk to them, which is my, political way of saying, hey, they're still trying to do something wrong. You got to go, go chase them down.
I didn't realize that you could send an email like that. That's really cool. A number of times I could have used that. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it. All right. So last is going to be me. I'm going in with a little bit lower tech way of getting data into NetBox because, ultimately, hopefully they're places that have at least some sort of information out there in some sort of documented format that can eventually end its way up in a CSV format. So I've got just a couple of dummy devices here, and we've got five. We have five here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 switches and 5 patch panels. So the way that you've for quite some time have been able to do imports into NetBox is through the device bulk import screen, where you can upload a file or just paste data in. Something that's new, though, is the ability to do that with JSON or a YAML file. So we'll do the comma separated first. We'll go ahead and send that in. Let me expand my screen a bit here. Where's that grab bar at? This is what I get for using an underpowered VM. All right, there are my switches. Easy enough. But we can also do JSON now. So here are a few more switches in a JSON format. And you can see here, it's set to auto detect right now. So you don't necessarily have to pick that. Go ahead and submit those. All right, JSON will work well. And then once that finishes, I'll do it one more time with YAML. It's working like it should. So once these are in, and you can see I kind of used bad names here, just my new switch. And the way I like to think about kind of what I'm going to do next is more along the lines of, well, let's say there's been an acquisition and names need to change, or you need to update really just any bit of how a device is configured inside of NetBox itself. I'm going to pick on the name because that's an easy one to pick on. But realistically, it can be anything that you can assign to a device. If I jump back over here into the bulk reporting fields here, or the bulk import, there's this option down here that lets you import an ID as part of this bulk action. But the interesting part about that is, okay, when you create a new device, that ID is generated on the fly. So the new feature here is it will actually update the existing object if an ID exists already alongside it. So if I went back over into devices, and just did an export of everything. And so we'll go ahead and open that up. So open the wrong screen. Here we go. So now you can see, all right, here's everything that I just created. We have the ID in there as well. But what I'm going to want to do is change some of these names here. So you still have to, when you're doing an import, abide by the import rules if you're trying to do a bulk change. So we still need to have our fields named the same way. And there are other ways that you can go about controlling that export through export templates so that the data comes out in the format that you want it. But it seems like, at least from my experience, anytime that you're working with CSV files, there's always some tinkering that you have to do to align column names and things like that. So we'll leave the ID the same. Role is device role. Name is good. Manufacturer is good. Device type. I believe that's all I'll need. Status and site status. That needs to be lowercase active.
That should be device type, not time.
You are right. Thank you. I did not catch who pointed that out. Thank you.
And also, I think manufacturer rather than manufacturer.
I did that on purpose, I swear, just to see if people were paying attention. I didn't do that on purpose. Those are genuine typos. All right, and we'll dump the rest of these because we don't need them. We don't even need wrap. So this should be everything we need. We have device role, we have manufacturer, we have the name, we have the type, the status, and the site. So we'll set. So if I want to update these now, we can just call them, we'll keep it easy. Let's just say switch 10, switch 11. I'm not going to go through all of them, but that should be enough for Excel to figure out what I'm trying to do. And we'll call it P panel 10, P panel 11. Same thing, we'll just complete those out and we'll leave the other ones as they are. So we'll go ahead and just kill those. All right, so now I've got my updated file. So let me actually get to the comma separated version. So there we go. We'll copy that and we'll go ahead and paste it in. And if I was careful enough, there we go. So it says that it is imported 10 devices, but we can see the names have changed now. Oh, wait, did that not work? Did I do it wrong? I must have done something wrong. Well, that's embarrassing for a live demo.
That's how you know it's real.
Right? Yeah. So let's see here. What did I do?
Oh, Simon
wrong?
calls out the ID header should be lowercase.
You know what? That's exactly what it was. So, all right, let's try that one
Good
more
catch,
time.
Simon.
Yes, thank you, Simon. So back over here, did that not save?
There's an open bug for that, by the way. I just feel obligated to point out for detecting otherwise invalid headers. So that is something being worked on currently.
Thank you, Jeremy. And Simon again. Oh, and now I really made it mad because the name already exists because I just created them incorrectly. All right, so let's go back. Let's kill those that I created. That's a good sign that it errored, though, because that means it actually tried to perform the task I wanted it to do this time. And after we delete those out, go back in, import one more time. There we go. Now our IDs look good and they've been updated accordingly. So it's, you know, you still need to be correct when you're doing things. In order for something to be the source of truth, it needs to be true. So yeah, once that was corrected, it all went together fine. So that's different ways of bringing data in different formats and making a change. There's one more bulk action that I really like that I want to demonstrate as well, and that's doing cabling. So when my favorite environments to work in were the ones where I had a 48 port patch panel and a 48 port switch, and everything was just one-to-one. So you could go look at a data jack on a wall and say, okay, I'm in this closet in this patch panel. And if everything is laid out appropriately, you could jump in and say, okay, well, my patch panel goes to my switch. My patch panel goes to my switch. And depending on how far you want to model this, you could start building in kind of cool automations to say, well, I only need to know the jack number on the wall to be able to get over to that switch port or something along those lines. But in order to do that, you need to make sure that all of those interfaces are actually connected to patch panel ports so that you can put that together. So I have a larger comma separated here, which I'll have to change the names on here now because I did change the names of the switch. So it's no longer my patch 10. It was PPAN 10? Yeah, PPAN 10. And we'll just swap all those out. And then it's no longer my new switch 10. It's just switch 10, right? Right. So then you can see through here, just kind of through the headers. All right, we have which side, the A side. Okay, it's this device, this type of port, and then the port identifier going to what's on the B side. So switch 10 to the interface gig 10. And it's a Cat 6A connection. So this is just the 48 ports for that one switch. If we jump down into connections and cables, you can see we have nothing there right now. But if we go ahead and put that in, it'll chew through and create all of those cabling links for you. So now if I jump back over into switch 10 and over to the interfaces, let me expand this out a little bit so they fit on single lines. You can see, all right, now that entire switch, at least for the 48 in-band ports that I'd be looking to map into a patch panel, have all been mapped in. And you can look at it from the other side as well. So we'll jump over to patch panel 10, look at the front ports, and yes, it's on switch 10 GI 101. If you've not played around with this cable mapping, it gets really fun when you start getting into the rear ports and you do cross connects between data closets or between floors, just different things like that. So you can do a layer one trace from switch port to switch port and have an idea of how, like, you know, you've got a 24 strand fiber. Okay, which actual fibers are in use, different things like that. So that is importing different formats and bulk creating some cables as well. Any questions?
That was awesome, Jordan. Thanks for running through all that. Yeah,
Yep.
It's probably one of those long overdue features that I think we added that in 3.4, if I'm not mistaken. So
That sounds about right.
Very cool. Also, I'll chime in just to touch on what I mentioned for 3.5. Also, if you go back to the import view real quick, there are two ways of importing this data. So we have what Jordan was doing, just copying and pasting. You also have under the second tab, which is uploading a file. The intent is that with version 3.5, we'll have a third tab, which will be to source the data from one of those remotely synchronized data files. So we'll be introducing that ability as well. Just wanted to call that out real quick.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, I hope that people find that useful. Obviously, the kind of the paradise is an automation paradise, but it's hard to get there instantly. And I know this is a good way to start onboarding data in a not completely automated fashion, but not, let's create a new device 150 times. Cool. So if there's nothing else on that, going once, going twice. Cool. So that pretty much brings us to the end, at least in terms of the content that we had today. So I know we're going to be sending out a survey. It would be great for everyone to fill that out. I think, is that in chat now?
Yeah, Maggie just dropped that in the chat, and you should get an email. I think we're sending an email out after the fact as well. As Jordan mentioned, toward the beginning, this is the first time we're trying this new format. So we've been doing these community calls for about a year now, and previously they were more webinar centric. Let us know. Do you like the new format? Do you like the topics? Do you want to see something else? Any feedback? Let us know. The surveys will help definitely shape future calls.
Yeah, absolutely. And just real quick before we go too far into the closing, just want to let everybody know that once we're done sort of closing everything out, we're going to go ahead and just leave the Zoom open until the top of the hour, just for general conversation, just to kind of make it feel a bit more like a meetup post convention or just anything like that. So we'll keep things open a bit longer. So a few shout outs in there. Alex and Tyler, thank you so much for being our guinea pigs on this.
Yes, thank you.
It went really well.
No
And like mentioned at the top, if anybody would like to participate in one of these in the future, please reach out to Jeremy or I, and we'll definitely get you lined up for it. Super huge shout out to our newest maintainer, Daniel. I think it's Anner, right, Daniel?
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, I don't know how many people look at the device type library, but he showed up one day and said, "Hey, can I help fix that?" And just went ham on it. I don't know if going ham on something is a globally known term, but he has really taken ownership of that. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. Dan,
go ahead, Jeremy.
Dan's done a tremendous amount of work, bringing the device type library up to date, going through old PRs, going through closed PRs. So Dan, thanks Dan very much for that. Sorry, for those who might not know, the device type library is it's a repo under the NetBox community organization on GitHub that stores basically just hundreds and hundreds of device type definitions. So any kind of real world device that you might want to import to NetBox, we've already gone through the trouble of defining all the device type attributes, the components, and so forth. So you can just copy and paste that into NetBox and get up and running a little bit faster. And that's thanks to the many people who have contributed to it, as well as to people like Dan who have gone through and curated the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'll bring that up in a second after I hit these last three here. For anyone who is at Nanog or who follows Nanog with the hackathon at this most recent one in Atlanta last week, NetBox was featured heavily in there. So for all of the teams that participated in the hackathon in general, and especially the teams that used NetBox as part of their hackathon presentation, the work that they did, huge thank you to all those folks. Giant thank you to Palmer. I know you're on the call right now for the work that you did with your presentations at Cisco Live Amsterdam. You don't have to come on mic if you don't want to, but I know you did some in Australia. You're going to be doing more in Vegas at that Cisco Live. So thank you for all the work that you do, just bringing that to Cisco's audience so that they can see a bit of how NetBox works.
Yeah, actually, Jordan, that's going to be 3 sessions at Cisco Live US where we feature NetBox. So we've got a 4-hour lab It's event-driven automation where we're going to be focusing on webhooks and how you can drive automation using NetBox. And then we have 2 DevNet workshops. Actually, it'll be 3 DevNet workshops where we'll be using sources of truth and also exploring wireless capabilities, CSV imports, things like that. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. That's great. I know one person who's not on here that I do want to call out, or actually, so we've got 3 NetBox Labs employees that I want to call out. First, I know Rich Bibby from NetBox Labs really helped you out at Cisco Live this past time around. So I just kind of want to say thanks to Rich and Maggie and Kylie for helping us bring all of this together for our very first one. Hopefully you all found it useful, fun, entertaining, maybe even a little bit. So that's the end of everything that we have scripted. Like I said, we're going to leave it open just for general conversation, questions about anything that you saw. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the device library here and just poke around that a little bit, and we'll take questions, comments. But if we're all good as well, I really appreciate everyone for joining us.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Yeah, the device type library, for anyone who's sticking around and isn't familiar with it, it's relatively in depth. So we'll pick on Cisco because they're fun to pick on. Sorry, Palmer. So here's
this has come a long way. I saw this not long ago. I was like, where did all these come from? This is awesome.
Yeah, it'd be great if Cisco said, hey, yeah, we'll do this for you guys, but they're community generated, and it's nice because it brings uniformity into how your devices are established inside of NetBox, that it becomes a template, that every time that you deploy a 9348 port with the enterprise license, that it pops out the exact same way.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I've noticed is it gives people pause, because whereas they might have otherwise just said, oh, it's a Cisco 9200L, right? If you go to look it up in the device type library, it calls your attention to the fact that there are multiple SKUs that meet that model, right? And you go through there, which might seem pedantic, but then if you get further along your automation journey and say, oh, well, I'm going to start, auto detecting these from the device. Well, the device is going to report a specific SKU, a very specific model number.
Yep.
So you need to have that already defined in your source of truth in NetBox to match, right? Otherwise, it's not going to correlate, or it'll correlate partially, but you won't know exactly which one, right? So getting that data up in, ahead of time, getting it populated, going through those extra steps to have that degree of detail is going to be, it paves the way for huge wins later on.
Yep.
I encountered something a bit weird. I think with the way NetBox models this, in that with an MX10003 Juniper, you have the line card, which is obviously a device. The device type is the chassis. The module, the line card is a module, but these modules have modules. And I don't think you can put modules in modules. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Currently, we're limited in that you can only install one module in a module bay, and you can't install a module bay in a parent module. There was some discussion around that when we implemented that, or before we implemented that in, oh gosh, it was, I want to say 3.2 maybe, or sometime around there, sometime last year. And for whatever reason, we decided to eschew that, at least for the time being, because of the several technical challenges that the nested modeling, nested modules represent, which isn't to say we'll never do it. It's something we could certainly reconsider. I think that the primary concerns back then were just getting it done and getting it ready to ship so that people would start using it at least and stop modeling line cards as device types. But yeah, something worth revisiting, certainly.
Yeah, and that's just kind of continuing the conversation around this. So if you do have something that's chassis based, you can put line cards in. If you've got something that's more like a chassis server, so let's take like a UCS Blade server, you have those sorts of things that can be inserted as well. So a real easy way to sort of differentiate between a device type and a module type is that a device type can generally stand on its own, more or less. Now, obviously, a server can't, a chassis-based server, like the blade itself, can't stand alone on its own, but it is its own contained device. It has its own operating system, its own storage, which may be remote but it's got some kind of onboard storage. Like it is an actual device. Whereas, go ahead, Jeremy.
Sorry, just not to cut you off, but like a handy litmus test I like to tell people is, does it have its own control plane? If it does, then it's its own device. If it doesn't, if it's something like a line card where it's reliant on the parent device to operate, then we know it's a module.
Yep, and that's where you can see here what I was really looking for, like the supervisors, like the Cisco supervisors. Those can't really live outside. They need to be in that chassis, or the line cards inside of there. And I know the server can live inside it as well, but I like your litmus test better than mine.
There was one comment in the chat. So Patrick points out saying, I think that power supply modules should also be handled as modules. You can. The reason that a lot of them are not defined that way is simply because the definition was contributed prior to the introduction of support for modules in NetBox. So you can model them as inventory items, or you can also model them as modules in module base.
Yeah, Jeremy, already doing that. So just want to highlight that it actually would be a good way moving forward to handle them as modules, I think.
Gotcha.
Same also for interface cards as what you're just discussing there.
Gotcha.
Cool. Well, everyone, that does run us up just a bit past the top of the hour. I do really appreciate everyone's attendance and participation. If you have any feedback, you can drop here in chat. Please fill out the survey if you haven't started on it already. Jeremy, any closing thoughts from you?
No, I'll just say thank you to everyone who presented, everyone who attended. Hopefully the new format was conducive. And if you do have feedback, I'll say drop on the survey, probably not the chat, because I'm not sure what happens to the chat once we close it. But by any means, or there's always the NetDevs, the NetBox Slack channel on the NetDev chat. So you can always drop it there.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and close it out. Have a nice weekend, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Bye, folks.
All right. Thanks, everyone.